Today, thought I had my good friend on, Andrew Meyer, to kind of discuss. He's been working from home and has some experience with that, some of the pros and cons with that. So, Andrew, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, no problem.
I'd love to kind of hear your journey, maybe just from a kid to now, like what you are, like just a quick journey, not like super in depth, but just like how you arrived where you're at now, type of thing. So.
Okay. Well, I grew up here in Des Moines. Went to school at Drake, so I didn't go too far away. Studied English and design there, and then right out of school, while I was in school, I got an internship doing design and web development, and worked at that company. Actually, I got the internship in 2005, and I worked at that same company till 2016. And then in 2016, in about the middle of the year, that company stopped working there, but then switched over to working for a business in Arlington, Virginia, working with the federal government. And so starting in 2016, I started working remotely here for them, and I worked there until earlier this year. And so I now work at a company here in town, but I've been working remote since August of 2016. So I've been doing it for a little while now.
Yeah. I know, like, in my industry, it took me a while to kind of get a rrhythm of being productive. So I know for working from home right now, this is a new thing for a lot of families. What does a typical day look like when you're working from home?
So I would say that I think it was helpful for me going from, I think it was helpful starting working in an office, because I think you build better habits. I think when you have the accountability of people around, that, you arrive to the office at a certain time and you, work hard. And I think some of that stuff can kind of be, it's regulated by having people around you that are hopefully doing the same thing. And, there's to some degree, you're not wanting to get in trouble or whatever. So I think for me, transitioning from working in an office to working remotely I tried to keep as much as I could the same. So I was thinking like what my tips would be, and this would be one of my tips, but I wake up, shower, get dressed, do my hair every day, even if I'm not leaving the house, because I find that if I feel like I'm ready for the day, I'm going to work a lot better than if I'm wearing the clothes I slept in, rolling out of bed. And I know maybe for some people that's what they do and they don't seem to have trouble with it. But for me, there's a mental aspect of when I'm ready, then I can really focus. And so I still do that. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you. What's really strange thing about me during COVID, I kind of got out of the habit in my morning. Yeah. Because I couldn't really go to the gym to work out. A lot of my habits I go to, I couldn't do. But when Starbucks opened, I would take a shower, I'd go through the drive-thru, and then come right back here in my home office. So it's just a weird thing, but I'm very similar to you. I just felt like I needed to kind of feel like I'm in work mode.
Yeah, it's really great to have that routine. I don't know if this is really what you're going for, but I think another thing that I found to be incredibly helpful, and I know this isn't feasible for everybody, but as much as it's possible, if you can have a separate work area in your home, even if it's small, if it's a closet or under the stairs or something, having a different space is really helpful, because I've seen statistics that say working from home, people end up working much longer hours. Yeah. And so the tendency is to let that line between work and home blur. And even in companies where they encourage a good work-life balance, it's just hard not to, if somebody asks you to work a little bit longer, or if somebody needs something, it's harder to not just do it. And, I find it's not uncommon for me to be working and look at the clock, it's 6 or 6:30, and I'm like, oh, I really don't have to do this. These expectations are not on me. But sometimes it's well, what am I going to do? Walk downstairs and watch TV now or whatever. So I think having a separate space helps a little bit more to keep those lines clear. Like, I don't work on the weekend because I don't go into my office on the weekend. It's just like I have no need to go to that room unless I am working. So I just don't. And I think that is helpful, just for your sanity. Because I think, I worked from home for like 4 years, the whole time really liked it. And then that was actually part of the reason that I got a new job this year was because I was hoping to get back in an office, just because I think over time it takes a toll, just especially in like social interaction. I think, certainly there's the introverts out there who maybe would love to never see another person, but I really don't even think that, I don't think that's what being introverted really is.
Yeah.
But I think, there's just opportunities you miss out on not being in the office, whether it's, rubbing shoulders with your boss or your boss's boss, or, having FaceTime with people that may be helpful for your career, or, just the conversations over the water cooler, just all that kind of thing that it builds relationships, which makes work a little bit more enjoyable, I would say. But then also, I think a lot of work actually gets done in those times, because when people are building relationships, they're more likely to, be aware of who knows what. And then when you're trying to solve a problem, maybe you remember, oh, so-and-so was working on this problem a couple weeks ago and was mentioning something about it. And I think it over time, it probably is better to be around people. But of course, now we have a unique situation. But I think some of those things will be interesting to see how people navigate it over time.
Yeah, I would think that there's a lot of benefit, just that connection of like, we just accomplished something, we're together, type of thing, and kind of seeing people's facial, like, just reactions and stuff. And we've all been in situations too when you get a text and you don't know the tone. Yeah,
exactly.
And if you're in the office, you can kind of know if someone's joking or not. And someone, like with me, I'm over emoticon now. I do just so people can know like what I'm saying.
I had an old boss great boss. I really like her. But she would every once in a while send these emails. And I'd get the email and it read like I was in serious trouble. And I'd be like, oh no, what happened? So a lot of times I would just like not respond to the email, because this is when I was in an office. I would just go to her office and be like, hey, like, what? And there was more than one time where I like honestly thought I was like in severe trouble. I go to the office. She's like, oh no, you're fine. Blah, blah. And it was just the email. The email didn't communicate what her tone actually was.
Yeah, I think that for me would be a challenge, especially if it's 100% remote.
Yeah.
And it seems like there might be some more hybrid. So maybe might be a situation, maybe they offer someone like a day.
Right.
Or like some companies, maybe that, because I do think that there is something about being together.
Right. What I see as probably the most likely outcome of all of what we're going through now is that it'll make companies more willing to be flexible, because they have now like seen that it can work. And so even if they're not telling people like you can work full time from home, if people need to take, I even think about like maternity, paternity leave. Sometimes like you may be able to get some work done, but like it's nice to be around the house longer. Maybe you can stretch out the time that you're out of the office a little bit, even if you're still contributing. So there's things like that we may see companies become more flexible on.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat where I'm trying to I kind of in preparation of this have too many stats. So but it was just like pre-COVID, a lot of companies were like, no way. And then their hand was forced, and like you're saying, it's like, oh, it's actually working out okay. So a little bit more flexibility for families and things like that, or if people need it. So what have been some of the highlights or some of the pros to working from home and some of the cons?
I would say some of the pros for me are, and I guess this can go both ways, but it is really nice, like how the time savings you get when you're not commuting to and from an office. And so whether that's whether you sleep in longer or take more time getting ready, however it works, just having more, like, not quite the same rush pace in the morning, and avoiding traffic on the way home. And there is something that's really nice about when you're done working, you for me, my office upstairs. I walk downstairs and then that's it. I'm done working. Mm-hmm. And so that's obviously nice. At my old job, it's kind of a long story, but I had a couple friends who were traveling in Europe, and they had purchased they'd got a really nice big Airbnb, which was basically like a small apartment. It had multiple bedrooms and stuff. And they were like, hey, like, we're here all week. There's plenty of room for you. Just come hang out with us here in Prague. And I was like, at first I was like, no, I can't do that. But then, you start to look at it, and Europe is, I don't know, depending on the area, 7 or 8 hours ahead. So like if you wake up there at 8 a.m. or whatever, you can go do whatever you want in the morning, start working around noon, which is when the workday would start here. And then what we ended up doing, and then like around dinner time there would be lunch here. And so it was like very feasible to like go work the whole week, but still get to do all the sightseeing stuff in the morning. If you wanted, you could still like go out for dinner in the evening over people's lunch. And then like you go to bed at like midnight or something, so it wasn't really even that late. Mm-hmm. And I think I did that like once or twice. That was like, you wouldn't be able to do that otherwise.
Yeah.
I actually kind of I later on told them, but I didn't tell my boss beforehand. Yeah. And so like I actually talked about it on my podcast, which my boss listened to, and so it ended up all being fine, but it was kind of funny you could just work from someplace else if you want to. Yeah. And I've heard of, kind of in the same vein, there's some people I follow online who are like, they work for a magazine in New York City where, when things there have been, especially early on when things there were pretty hard, they were able to like, go to their parents' house or just leave the city but still work and everything. And I think that's nice to have that kind of flexibility, that if you can, if there's reasons for you to work from some other place, it's not so hard if you're already remote. Mm-hmm. I would say, so I mean, I think those are some of the bigger benefits. There's certainly others. I don't have a family, but if you do, it may be nice to be, around your kids more often. And there's that kind of thing. I think some of the drawbacks, I talked about this earlier, but just it is the reduced interaction with people. Yeah. And I think especially when maybe you're going through more stressful periods of work, it can be just that much harder to not like, it's helpful sometimes to be able to just like go vent to somebody or have people around you that are going through the same thing, that you don't really have to like, you don't have to explain to somebody else the whole situation. They can just be like, yeah, this sucks. And you're in it with somebody. Yeah. So I think the lack of that could be difficult. One of the things I'm looking forward to, incidentally, with working is the commute. So I think that can go both ways. Yep. But there is something that's nice about kind of having this buffer between work and home. And I think especially like if you have a family, if you've had a stressful or a long day at work, maybe it's nice to have, 20, 30 minutes before you're back at home that you can kind of process and decompress and kind of de-escalate before you go right back into something like that. So I think that can, in some ways, it can go both ways.
Yeah, recently, like, I have a podcast, or like, that I listened to that was pretty exciting. Yeah. I mean, so like the other day, I was like, I need to run out to Ankeny, where I was, that's like 30 minutes. I was like, I was like kind of excited to listen to when I was driving type of thing, because it was at a point where it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think decompressing too. It's nice to have that buffer, because one thing I balance working from home at times, it's like I don't want to, when my kids are young, to just be their memory of me being home is saying get away. Yeah. You gotta give me some space. And so that's why right now I've right when our office at Remax opened up, my office there opened up, I'm there a lot more often and than prior to here. So there is like definitely some pros and cons to that. Now we'll kind of circle back to this, but if someone is taking a job, they're going to be working remotely. Let's kind of run through that quick or not pros and cons, but you had discussed like getting ready, like each day, having a space. Are there any other kind of tidbits you think, even the social interaction?
And this is not necessarily going to be something that's all within one person's control, but I think in software development, which is what I do, it's pretty standard to have like a meeting every day, kind of like we call it stand up, but basically where everybody's kind of saying, hey, this is what I did yesterday, this is what I'm doing today, I'm waiting on these things, or just kind of everybody to give a status update.
Mm-hmm.
And
was that through video, or was that through?
Yeah, so we do it on Zoom.
Okay.
My last company did it with Slack video.
Sure.
But that's really nice, actually, just so you feel connected to people you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to be working on something that you need help with or whatever, then you could be like, hey, I'm going to reach out to somebody today to get help with this. And I think it's nice to have that kind of connection so you don't feel like you're on an island someplace. Mm-hmm. And then something else that we do, which it's kind of great, is every afternoon we just have a standing meeting on everybody's calendar. We call it water cooler, which, sometimes everybody's there. Sometimes you get on and nobody's there. But it's nice to just have like a daily check-in that there's no like agenda for. Mm-hmm. So I've been on that call and we've like talked about coffee for an hour.
That's right.
And then other times we're like bringing up questions like, hey, I was working on this, couldn't figure this thing out. Does anybody know about this? Mm-hmm. And so to me, I think if you are going to be working remotely, and especially if your whole team's remote, having that kind of check-in point like on the calendar is really nice to just I loved it that our stand-up meeting's at 9 a.m. So I really like that because I have to be at my desk by 9 every day. Usually I'm there before that, but it also just kind of makes sure that my schedule doesn't get off. Mm-hmm. And then again, the thing in the afternoon. So I think that sort of thing is really helpful to help you stay connected to people as you're working with them.
And then, one thing too, like having that office space, like you talked about earlier, kind of creates a firm boundary. Like,
correct.
Work is off. To the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And physically coming and going. Yeah, I think that the boundary thing would be probably my biggest challenge. I work remotely, kind of what I do, but that is a challenge that I'm constantly kind of working through.
Right.
What the appropriate boundaries
are. And I think even this is probably applicable anywhere, and I understand that not every company would be like this, but just kind of making sure that you understand clearly what your expectations are in terms of the time you're giving and things.
Yeah.
Like the company I'm at now is awesome in terms of like with the way our vacation policy and everything is set up. Like if you have to do something, they're like, you go take care of your stuff. Like, yes, you need to get your work done, but like if you're getting everything done, then like it's important that you are able to take care of your family and your life and everything else as well. And so I think having a clear understanding about like what's expected is just nice, because then like how long should I be physically sitting at my desk every day?
Yeah.
How like what's the expectation? If there's not a clear expectation there, like what are my priorities to get done? Some of that's just sort of basic how to work, but also I think if those things aren't clear, I think that's when people maybe start to have the temptation to like, what time do I really have to start? And 3:30, I'm done. You know, so there's like an ethical aspect there of just making sure that you're bringing good value to your employer and things like that.
And one of the things too, with we'll link this article when we post this, but one of the things they said is that when you communicate, 30% of people say when they're working from home, they save over $5,000 a year just traveling. Probably in Iowa, it's probably like $1,000 to
right.
$1,500. And then a significant percentage, I'll have to look it up, but say that they have reduced stress by working from home.
Yeah.
And I think part of that too, Drew, when we talked to Drew Harden, and he's, on his kind of vision and their, just kind of their mission as a company, they just really want to have a healthy community.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of things to build that. But it seems like some people, if they're not in a healthy working community, they might just be tempted just to jump 100% remote, which can be good. Mm-hmm. But like what you're saying is, in these stats, 19% of employees say that they are suffering from loneliness, or that's the biggest challenge. Not that you're like lonely, but just like you kind of, that little it factor, kind of that team set up. But it just seems like, logically, it seems like you've had really good employers, but it just seems like some people might be like, oh, I can work remotely and that'll solve all my problems.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're in a toxic like work environment with a lot of gossip, it might actually be worse too.
Yeah,
type of thing with that. So
for sure. Which that's an interesting topic. I like. Of course, everybody is in a different spot, but I feel like if you're really unhappy with your work, don't quit your job, but look, it might be a risk, but it's thankfully we live in an economy that, at least in theory, there are options out there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like it's more of a lot with this article, people, if they read it, I mean, they'll see that it's like, it is, I think it's a personality too, that you can work from home. And it seems like if you really are gunning for it, like 100% remote, like you love it. But I think the good news though too, kind of what we alluded to with post-COVID, I think there'll be a lot more flexibility. Yeah. Because there's going to be times like, there's a health issue or you're recovering, it's like you can still work full. You don't and you can plan for your vacation, but you can have a hybrid of it.
It kind of opens your eyes, because I don't know, when I was in an office, how many times I was like, I probably have a cold, but I don't want to take vacation time, so I'm going to work anyways. Where there's things like that where it's like, if you're sick, your coworkers all would prefer you're not there. Yeah. And so there's something about, hopefully that maybe one thing will change is that people are more comfortable saying like, hey, I've got a bug, I'm working from home, just to be safe.
That's the big worry that employers have. It's like, well, are you just gonna be wasting your time? But now it's like you actually have learned how have like a plan B. Okay, if you're working from home, maybe like you said, daily stand up and an afternoon stand up. Which is nice about having an afternoon meeting is that if you have just random questions throughout the day, you can just compile them and then just wait for them versus feel like you're bugging someone too. Right. But the good thing is, I remember Christmas of 2018 was no big deal. But after we opened presents with my kids, I started having my stomach started to hurt, and then subsequently all of us had the flu.
Oh no!
And so it's like, so even like in hindsight, it's like, well, maybe I got from my office is so small, I didn't get it from them. But it's like, that stuff, even just learning about how things can be spread, it's like, if someone's feeling sick, it's like we're kind of learning, like, well, let's not pass that on to somebody else, and then you can get your work done from home and not take vacation time off, So there are some benefits, but I think that the hybrid will probably become more prevalent. I do agree, just there is something designed in us to really want to be around people for the most part, and so, or to some capacity, and some engineers, computer engineers, they might need just their space from home, even just to do that but you have to be wired a certain way to really thrive working remotely 100%, but it's good. But I think during this time, thank you for joining us. I think you gave some really good advice for people kind of getting used to this new norm, and I think that I'm 34 years old, a solid middle-aged man right now, and it's just like we just kind of have to embrace technology and embrace just to kind of need changes and go with the flow, but hopefully everybody's staying safe through this time, and it's we'll look back 2020, what a crazy ride it's been. So, but Andrew, thank you for taking time to visit with us, and it's just great to have you on.
Yeah, great. I'm glad I could join.
Yeah, thank you.